The film industry has come a long way from the black and white 2-second motion picture it started out as. A very basic version of color film was introduced in 1908, and the very first film with synced sound dialogue was produced in 1927. But the true film frontier was in 1920, when The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari was released, setting the stage for new possibilities in film. The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari is a German film released in 1920 that took the film industry by surprise through its use of bizarre sets and strange character developments representing the melancholy of post-World War I Germany. The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari was a huge frontier in film because of the way it changed what was socially acceptable for movies at the time, and it has continued to change and influence cinema even today. In 1888, the very first film was created. It was very simplistic, lacking color and sound, and it was only 2 seconds long. Within years, cinematography grew immensely. Films went from seconds-long productions to hour-long movies, and although very few had any form of speech, most had music audio. The color quality also improved greatly, from any type of color having to be hand-drawn to shadows and highlights created by machine. Although film had advanced significantly since its original creation, variety was still very limited. There were few genres of film, the most popular being westerns, comedies, and epics. At the same time, German historicism was experiencing a crisis in which many German historians were afraid that Germany's culture and history would be forgotten. Their solution to this issue was a unique one. They began the German Expressionist movement. Starting in 1905, artists and composers began to create pieces of music and art that conveyed emotion and reality from that time in society in a way that was distorted and emotive in an attempt to preserve their country's history. These fine arts were designed to be pieces of historical evidence to preserve elements of German culture and ways to encourage viewers and listeners to rethink historical reality. Throughout the rest of the decade, the German Expressionist movement continued to grow in popularity. Hundreds of artworks and pieces of music had been created by the time the movement started to die out in the mid-1910s. When World War I started in 1914, German Expressionism as a whole was almost completely eradicated. As the war progressed, more and more unfavorable measures were taken into effect and a film ban was placed on Germany, preventing any type of movie or video to be exported from the country. Along with this, many anti-German propaganda films were released from other countries, giving Germany a bad name and creating tension within the German government. Due to the fear and dislike associated with Germany during the war, a German general by the name of Erich Ludendorff founded a film company called the Universum Film Aktiengesellschaft, or the UFA, which loosely translates to the Universal Film Joint Stock Company in English, in December of 1917. Ludendorff's hopes were that the UFA would be able to create better films to improve Germany's name and help the country out of the financial, economic, and social crises it was suffering from during and post-World War I. After World War I ended in November of 1918, the film ban on Germany was lifted and the UFA became the single largest film studio in Europe. The UFA released Das Kabinett des Dr. Caligari, or the Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, on February 26, 1920. Bringing the company its first artistic acclaim. The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari follows Alan and Francis, two friends, as they encounter the crazed Dr. Caligari at a fair. Caligari says that he has a hypnotized somnambulist, or sleepwalker, named Caesar, who can see into the future. Unexpectedly, Caesar predicts Alan's death, and when Alan is found murdered the next day, it sets off a string of killings that Francis must investigate. It is later discovered that Dr. Caligari is controlling Caesar to kill for him. The film ends with a huge plot twist where it is revealed that Francis is actually insane and he had imagined everything while being treated in an insane asylum. People found the movie intriguing because it looked nothing like the real world, yet represented current controversial aspects of reality. In order to create this warped sense of reality throughout the film, director Robert Wien and his crew utilized surrealist production design to give the film an unrealistic but nightmarish quality, creating an aura of fear and anxiety that directly affects the viewer. Everything from the floor to the ceiling was incredibly distorted. The film had extra shadows painted around the sets, and although the shadows were simply a result of the low budget, they played a huge role in the visual effects that made the movie so popular. The sets helped convey the feelings of discontent, fear, foreboding, and confusion that were prevalent in the characters of the film. These feelings resided in the viewers because they directly reflected their own, mirroring the current state of Germany after losing World War I. Besides representing what had already happened in war-stricken Germany, the the cabinet of Dr. Caligari also reflected the thoughts and fears of what was to come, specifically through the moods of paranoia shown throughout the characters and through the sets of the film. Ween deliberately developed a form of cinema that was extremely unrealistic, where mood and atmosphere trumped realism in order to represent the emotions of characters within the movie as accurately as possible. Some viewers saw the movie as a political analogy of the social and moral collapse of Germany after the war, due to the parts of the movie where a madman is on the loose, killing and spreading fear in a distorted and imbalanced society. The cabinet of Dr. Caligari is suggested to be a metaphor for a country in chaos following World War I. Because of this, the post-war connections, and the hidden political analogies, it was later classified as a German expressionist film, and is even now considered one of the best of the movement. When the cabinet of Dr. Caligari was first released in Germany, it didn't take well to the public. It was first premiered in Marmorhaus Theater in Berlin on February 26 of 1920, but it was only shown twice after viewers demanded refunds and expressed extreme dislike towards the film. However, thanks to 6 months of publicity work and advertisement, the cabinet of Dr. Caligari was shown again at the same theater to a much different response. It was highly praised, with the movie showing in the theater for 4 weeks, something that was unusual for the time period. The cabinet of Dr. Caligari was translated into English and imported to America only a year after its premiere, being officially released in the US on March 19th of 1921. Within years, dozens of other movies were released using expressionist themes and elements first seen in the cabinet of Dr. Caligari. In 1922, Nosferatu was released in Germany, using elaborate sets to create quasi-surrealist and dreamlike imagery, the same technique originally seen in the cabinet of Dr. Caligari 2 years before. Many movies followed, such as Waxworks in 1924, Metropolis in 1927, and The Man Who Laughs in 1928. The once dead German expressionist movement became a new sensation across both America and Germany, with expressionist ideals seen in film rather than art or music. Although some movies were more direct examples of expressionism, many films released in the future had some type of expressionist element, whether it be the use of line, angle, and depth to create mood, or perhaps hidden real-world connections or metaphors within the storyline. For decades after, German expressionism became a staple in cinema, increasing popularity in genres such as horror and film noir, and introducing new ways to portray human emotion on screen. Even a century after the cabinet of Dr. Caligari's release, elements, themes, and ideas of German expressionism can still be found in modern cinema. Today, expressionistic concepts have become so mainstream that movies and TV shows are still being released reflecting the ideas first seen in the cabinet of Dr. Caligari. Some directors, one of the most well-known being Tim Burton, have adopted the expressionist style and used it countless times in their productions. In 1993, Burton released The Nightmare Before Christmas, using obscure angles, contorted lines, and disorienting contrast to express emotion and mood within the film, very similarly to the way Ween did in the cabinet of Dr. Caligari. Burton's other works, such as Edward Scissorhands and Corpse Bride, are also very direct examples of modern-day German expressionism through the way the movies seek to create an emotional experience rather than realistically represent the world. Although Tim Burton is one of the leading directors that continues to use expressionism in his films, other directors still used and continue to use expressionist techniques within their productions. For example, Todd Phillips' 2019 film adaptation of the famous Batman villain Joker was directly inspired by the 1928 expressionist film The Man Who Laughs. Although the expressionist concepts aren't as obvious in Joker compared to in the cabinet of Dr. Caligari, they can still be found in the Joker's character design and costumes. One of the most recent examples of German expressionism today is Tim Burton's hit TV show Wednesday, with its dark themes and unique style of expression. Dozens of other movies, such as Batman Returns, The Babadook, Pan's Labyrinth, Shutter Island, and Beetlejuice, are all examples of the cabinet of Dr. Caligari's power to create a new generation of expressionism. The cabinet of Dr. Caligari has changed modern cinema in countless ways. A single silent film from 1920 helped develop the basis of creating mood, specifically in horror, by utilizing line, depth, contrast, and light that can still be seen in cinematography today. Thanks to the cabinet of Dr. Caligari, the genres of horror and film noir are increasingly popular. Light, shadow, and contrast have become an incredibly vital part of creating mood in every genre of movie. Emotion can be expressed in ways other than words, and what is considered possible within cinematic expressionism has grown to what it is today.